Have you ever wondered when it's safe for you to turn your child from a rearward-facing car seat to a forward-facing car seat? Or perhaps when they're ready to move out of the booster seat finally and sit in an adult seatbelt, all on its own? I'm Dr Anthea Rhodes, paediatrician and host of the RCH Kids Health Info podcast. And here today to answer these questions and more is Dr Warwick Teague, paediatric surgeon and director of our trauma service.
G'day Anthea, great to be here.
From the Royal Children's Hospital Melbourne, this is the Kids Health Info podcast.
Great to have you here, Warwick, to talk about some of these really complex issues when it comes to car seats. It should be simpler than it is, perhaps, but the latest National Child Health Poll really showed us that parents are still very confused when it comes to knowing what's safest for their kids in cars. So perhaps we could start with a bit of a chat about the law and how this differs from safest practice.
Absolutely. So we're going to see today some themes of the fact that parents are great at behaving and making decisions which fit with the Australian road rules and the laws we have around car restraints and children, which is excellent. But where the confusion arises is that we've got a growing gap between that which is required by law and that which we would recommend as the safest practice across lots of different age groups. And the key moments of decision making that you've pointed out are some of the pointiest ends to that mismatch and confusion.
So when it comes to, perhaps we'll talk about the younger children, so those under 2 years of age, there's a point where they can transition from a rearward or backwards facing car seat into a forwards facing car seat.
If we just dial back to when a child is just in the first weeks and months of life, they are required by law up until 6 months to be rearward facing. And the reason for being rearward facing is that's providing them with the most protection in the moment of a car crash, particularly thinking, but not only thinking, around serious head and neck injuries. From 6 months on, parents now have a choice whether they keep their child rearward facing or whether they turn them to be forward facing.
What actually happens if a child is facing forward? Legally, they're able to face forward, but if they're involved in a crash, a collision in the car, what happens to that child's body that is different from if they were facing backwards?
When you're facing forwards, in fact, your head and your neck are thrown forward. Your body is held by the harness, the inbuilt harness system of the restraint, but your head and neck are thrown forward in such a violent way that it can actually, in the worst circumstances, disconnect the bones and the nerves of the head and the neck from each other. Now, if we turn the child into a rearward facing, the first moment of force that that child experiences is actually to push their head and neck back into the safety of the car seat. And even in that less than a second moment, much of the force is dissipated out into the car restraint system, never reaching and hurting the child. The next moment, the second moment as the car recoils, will be to bring their head forward with now much less force, much less injury, and we would say a much, much, much lower chance of these catastrophic life redirecting or even life-ending injuries.
So sometimes parents wonder if it makes a difference which direction the car is hit in. For example, in a head-on collision, is the rearward-facing seat still as important?
So the rearward-facing seat continues to provide the best safety no matter what specific crash unfolds, because with really uncommon exceptions, cars are moving forward at the time of a crash. They might be travelling at 40 or 50 or maybe 100 kilometres per hour, but they're almost always moving forward. And it's because of that forward momentum that the car and any occupant of the car carries into the crash. The child who is rearward facing in that same moment, no matter which direction that the car was actually hit from, they're still going to be protected from those violent forward throwing forces because their head is going to come back into the seat which is now sitting behind them because they're facing in the opposite direction of the travel of the car.
So the takeaway message for parents is, even though it's legal from 6 months of age to turn your child facing forward, it's safest to keep them rearward up until 2 or even 3 years of age, as long as they still fit within that child restraint.
Absolutely. And to understand questions of fit, all restraints that are sold now in Australia have shoulder markers or other fit markers. And even if your child is younger than 2 or 3 years of age and they've outgrown the shoulder markers that you have, there's an opportunity to stay rearward facing because of the products that are available. Because rearward facing, even after it's legal to be forward facing, is still safer for children who can fit in a rearward facing restraint.
So, Warwick, moving now to the other trickiest transition point for parents and their kids when it comes to car restraints, and that's the time when it's right, safest for a child to move out of the booster seat into the adult lap sash seatbelt alone.
That is safe when a child fits within the adult lap sash seatbelt that comes with the car. And when you know that your child is of the right fit, the right height and stature, to be able to fit with just the adult lap sash seatbelt, it is now safe for them to have that kind of restraint. And we don't expect children in Australia to reach that fit or height until they're about 10, 11 or 12 years of age.
The law says that's from 7 years of age.
Yes, so the legal age of 7 and the safe recommendation, which really is being met by children who are 10 and 12 years of age, there's a really big difference. There's a lot of years between 7 and 10 or even 7 and 12 where children may be travelling in a way that is not safest but is legal, and that's a great concern for us.
So what is it about that child reaching 10, 11 or 12 years of age that makes them safe in the adult seatbelt alone, that perhaps the younger child is different for them?
Just like at any age with any child car restraint system, it's how a child fits into that system, which means, is this a safe system or is it time to move to the next system that's available? And when we speak of booster seats, fit within the booster seat is there to enable the lap sash seatbelt to fit correctly, to have the back firmly against the seat, to have the knees comfortably over the front of the seat, to have the lap sash low and tight, and to have the sash sitting across the middle of the shoulder. We don't meet those safety requirements until the child is maybe 10, 11 or 12 years of age, even accounting for the fact that some children are very tall at younger ages.
And so why is it that we have this discrepancy, Warwick, between what's legal, and parents are really good at following the law, and a lot of the time they tell us, well, it must be safe if that's what the law says.
The laws that govern how we put our children in cars today legally was last renewed in 2009. It represents the best 2009 understanding of what is safest according to 2009 products on 2009 shelves. Fast forward to 2025, we have a different understanding, a better understanding of what is safest. We have different and better products available for ourselves to buy for our children to keep them safest in cars as best as we can. And all of that has changed since 2009, but the law has stayed exactly where it was since 2009.
What happens if a child who's not of adequate size to sit safely in the adult seatbelt alone is sitting in the back of the car with the lap sash belt on and involved in a collision?
Yeah. So in general terms, a child that would fit in a booster seat but doesn't use one is about 3.5 times more likely to suffer a serious injury in the event of a car crash. And why is that? Because of a child's need to try and sit within the seat, if they're not big enough, what they'll tend to do first is they'll tend to slump. And they'll slump down because their knees have to bend and their knees will drag them forward. They'll slump down and their back will come away from the seat of the car, and the height of their shoulders relative to the seat will slump down. All of that is taking away the safety that the seatbelt is bringing to them, because the lap part of our seatbelt is designed to sit low and tight across our thighs. If we slump down, it doesn't go low across our thighs, it goes high over our tummy. So it's going to punch in and cause devastating damage to our internal organs of our tummy if it is suddenly thrust into us by the event of a car crash. The sash belt is designed to sit across the middle of our shoulder and our breastplate bone, so that in the event of a crash, those terrible forces we've been talking about have the chance to dissipate into our bone system rather than to go into the softer organ systems that sit behind them and cause that terrible damage. If we slump in our seatbelt, the sash doesn't anymore go across the middle of our shoulder. It rides up high And it doesn't take too much thought to wonder what would happen if we had a sash going right across the neck of a child. In this moment, a seatbelt is going to contribute to the injuries that child is going to have. And all of this opportunity for danger can be taken away, safety can be boosted by the presence of a booster seat, which in today's shops and cars is no longer a cushion which just lifts us up. It's a seat we sit in that has lateral supports which protect our head, increasing the safety that this provides.
You mentioned the 5-step test as being a way that parents might be able to check if their child is big enough and of the right size to safely ride without that booster. Can you explain the 5-step test to us?
So the 5-step test has 5 steps. The first step is to make sure that the child's back is firmly against the seat. The second and related part is to make sure that their knees comfortably bend over the front of the seat. And that's a great start, because if my knees can bend at the front and my back is firmly against the seat, I'm not being drawn into a slump like I would be if I was too short to be in this seatbelt. As a result, the lap part of the seatbelt is going to be able to sit low and tight across my thighs, allowing the pelvic bone to be a key safety part of in the event of a crash. And the sash part of the seatbelt is going to be sitting comfortably to cross the middle of my shoulder, coming across the breastplate as well. But I need to be able to do that not just for one moment, not just for the beginning of the journey. I need to be able to do that for the whole journey. I need to be able to stay safe for the whole journey. So the 5th step is to stay in that safe position for the whole journey. So they're the 5 steps to the 5-step test. Different cars will have subtly different results. All of these things need to be taken into account, because you need to know that your child is safe not just one day in one car, but also the next day in the next car. You might have to do it again.
One of the things that we also perhaps need to think about, Warwick, is how well, in the event that you do have a seat in your car, it's actually safely fitted. You've just talked about different vehicles all being a little bit different. Can you tell us a bit about that?
The first part of that restraint system providing our children with safety is for the car seat to be properly installed into the vehicle. Some of us have to move car seats between vehicles, so it's really important that if we are going to be doing that, that we know how to safely and correctly reinstall the car seat after any moves.
And it's a frustrating thing to have to do as a parent myself, fitting that car seat correctly, but really, really important if it's actually going to do its job and keep your child safe.
Absolutely, and perhaps it's an opportunity periodically to just have it checked. Get a professional to check the safety of the system that you're using. We certainly want to know that for any journey we ever go on, that we've put our children in the safest possible situation.
One of the very real challenges for parents is having to deal with perhaps behaviours or attitudes from their children around the transition of the car seat. So perhaps they turn their toddler facing forward because they prefer to see forward, or, they're grizzly facing rearward. Perhaps their 8 or 9-year-old says, I don't want to sit in the booster seat anymore. No one else is doing it at school. I'm too big for that. These are real challenges, and they make a difference when you're making a decision about what's safest.
But changing the law would make a really big difference in helping parents. The next thing I'd say is I'd really ask parents to own what they want. What we want for our children is to keep them the safest in all situations. There's a family I've got to know in the terrible reality of their child being in a car crash, not being big enough to ride without a booster, but not having a booster seat. This family have been wonderfully kind to share with us their onward journey. Where are they now? How do they feel about this? They've shared with me regrets. Their key regret is actually that they never had the chance to know that the decisions they were making were not safest for their child. They made great decisions in the cars they bought, in where they put the children in the car, but what they didn't know was that they're then not tall enough and not old enough to be riding without a booster child should be in a booster. This mum has reflected to me what she wished she could have said, and what she would ask other parents to say to their children when they say, no, I want to ride without the booster seat now. I'm 7, I'm 8, I'm 9, she would say to them, I love you very much. And the only people that can see where you are in the car right now are your family and people who love you very much. And for that reason, you're going to ride with the booster. And that's what I feel that we can always come back to as parents when these discussions are difficult. We'll come back to the fact that we do what is right for our children.
Absolutely. Such a powerful story for them to be sharing so generously. And as you say, Warwick, what is right is not always what's easiest. And that's one of those big challenges of parenting, taking on that battle and remembering how and why we're doing that. And thank you so much for coming along today and sharing that knowledge and those insights around car seats and their safety. And I'm sure parents will listen to that and take on board those really important messages so they can have an informed decision-making opportunity when it comes to their kids every time they travel in the car.
I hope that parents out there have heard that now's the time to change the conversation from what is legal to what is safest. So we're in that. Most parents are going to have new information. There's going to be discovery. There might be need for changes and humility and some struggle in that. But at the end of it, keeping us children safest, every car journey we take, that's what's important.
And if we all get on board, it's going to make it easier for everyone.
Absolutely.
Thanks again, Warwick.
Thank you.
Information in this podcast is general in nature and is intended to support, not replace, discussions with your doctor or healthcare professional. If you have concerns about your child, please consult your local healthcare professional for individual advice. This podcast is recorded on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and we pay respects to their elders. Kids Health Info is funded thanks to the support of the Royal Children's Hospital Good Friday Appeal.